and turn it over to Chris.
Thank you very much, Christine. Welcome, everybody, to today's webinar on Office 2016 and sort of the new Office and the way, the changes in which Microsoft's making to Office in general as the back end as well as from the user perspective. We'll kind of cover both today. So when we think about Office and we think about that sort of modern workplace, that modern desktop, really some of the challenges we're hitting as organizations are mobility. How can I access my information from any device, anywhere? Agile is not just a word for developers anymore, right? It's a part of our global culture, always on, always connected. And how are we gaining access to that information? And more importantly, collaborating with our teams and our peers, right? When we think about those serial processes, when we think about that, the ability to work together and the ability to create content, it's it's really a team process across multiple regions or multiple geographies or multiple departments. And that bar has really been raised for, when we think visually engaging and multimedia style presentations, when we think about the last 5 years. We also think about that uh, the access to information, BI, right? Business intelligence. How do we gain access and insight into information? And a lot of the changes in Office 2016 are also around gaining access to that information, gaining access to that data in the applications we live in, right? Bring the information to the user where they live, okay? Um, so when we think about those worlds, the new Office 2016 apps, there's really three main pillars we're going to cover. So when we think about built for teamwork, we're built for co-authoring. We're built for sharing through the cloud, right? It is a cloud-first, mobile-first world. Any of you who have heard Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, speak, right? It's cloud-first, mobile-first world. So building that shared collaboration through things like shared OneNote, through things like Skype meetings, through things like Office Anywhere. Then we start thinking about building it on the modern Microsoft platform, and Windows 10 is a part of that, and Cortana Analytics and the Windows 10 platforms. We'll extend that beyond too because Microsoft's gone above and beyond to incorporate the other devices in our life, iOS or Android or other components that we may be using. But we're going to talk a lot about that integration points with the other applications because that's really the Microsoft story all up, is the integration points to the other applications and the other features and functions. And then we think finally about, working for you, bringing that analysis to you, remembering who you are, remembering your settings, no more having to reconfigure each machine you utilize to function the way which you need, as well as bringing that data right to your fingertips, that smart lookup and improving the search capabilities. So these are the three main, when we go through all the features and functions, we're going to tie them back to these three key pillars. So when we think about built for teamwork, what does that really mean? It means allowing that connection between various groups, getting all the input from your doc without losing it or without having to leave it. Again, with a lot of these applications, we'll take Yammer as an example, and we're going to show this as we go through, bringing Yammer into our Word document so that we can have an internal conversation about a document or about a particular phrasing or paragraph or legal clause or slide or whatever it is that we're collaborating on and keeping that information. And usually the feedback I get is, well, what about comments? We could do that with comments now. Yes, but what happens when we are going to present that content out to the outside world? What's the first thing we do? We remove all the comments because we don't want the external world to see our internal conversations. So by moving those conversations to something like Yammer, we enable the retention of those features of those conversations so that 2 years from now, why did we put this clause in? Or 6 months from now, why did we change this slide to look like this? Well, here's the reasoning. Here's the conversation that happened. So bringing that collaboration, right? Working like you're all in one room. So let's go through some of those features and kind of look through that mirror. So when we think about co-authoring, right, being able to see those live updates of what's going on, utilizing things like OneDrive and SharePoint, whether it's on-prem or online, so that we can see those edits real time. This has been, you've been able to do multi-editing for SharePoint for some time, but I see your updates after you've typed them. You notice also on the side bar there, we have in our share window, we have who else is editing the document, and then we're seeing their Skype for Business presence built into that. So while I'm editing a document, I can see not only who's co-authoring, see what they're co-authoring, but I can also see their Skype for Business presence baked right into the document so that I can say, start an instant message, hey Robin, why are you changing that phrase? I thought we agreed on this, et cetera, right? And bring that real-time typing, but also bring that presence into Word, PowerPoint, OneNote, whatever it is. So co-authoring gets a nice improvement in 2016. Simplified sharing. So when we think about simplified sharing, we want to easily invite other people. So we've moved the share button. It's located right on the ribbon bar, right? If for those of you who are in Office 365 already, you'll notice a lot of these features and functions did come to the browser-based version of the application first. So the browser-based version of the app through Office 365 might have received this update 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months ago, but to bring things on premise takes a little more time. We'll talk about that from an IT perspective a little later on and some changes there, but from a user perspective, if you are an Office 365 customer today, go to the browser-based version, you'll see some of these updates there already. So again, bringing that share button right to the front, granting permissions to the document. And then when we start talking about tying it into RMS or rights management, so we're now going to start building within the Office Mesh, tying in all of that RMS capability into the local document. So we can build using the Enterprise Mobility Suite within Microsoft, build in security and controls to that sharing as well, identifying content types. So again, it's seeing that integration point between some of the applications on the back end, but also just in general making it easier to share. Specifically, when we talk about OneNote, it's really, for those of you who aren't big OneNote users today, OneNote is really improving the collaboration, including different objects from photos to videos, drawings. We're integrating other pieces of it, Outlook tasks. The big feature increase is, of course, a robust search, so that you can search through a huge OneNote and find anything that was indexed, find content that was entered by a certain person on a certain date, and go through and think about managing a project or managing a group activity using something like OneNote now. And then you take that, extend it further, OneNote is now baked in to things like Office 365 groups, where if you create a group in Office 365, it natively creates them their own online shared OneNote notebook across that entire team, which can be synchronized locally, kept so that I can collaborate with everybody in real time. Part of that sharing that becomes key, it goes into things like our modern meetings, like what we're doing here today using Skype for Business, where we're now baking into that IM presence voice video, co-authoring varying documents within a Skype meeting, right? Taking and creating, I can share one of the content types in a Skype for Business meeting is a shared OneNote notebook. So I could open up a OneNote notebook that is for this particular meeting. When you do that, it also takes attendance. So now you start seeing the integration between the Office application, Skype for Business, The client will then take attendance, who dialed into the meeting, where did they come from, uh, and so when I have all my notes, I can reference back who was in that meeting. So now we're going to bake into all of our collaboration real-time video, real-time voice, uh, as well as doing things like hosted global meetings or large-scale meetings. There's a service now from Microsoft for doing meetings of up to 10,000 people using online services so that you can host maybe an all-hands meeting or an external webinar. Okay, so now when we think about that integration point with Windows 10, when Microsoft with Windows 10, and I won't deviate too far into talking about Windows 10, but when we think about Windows 10, the real key with 10 is that real-time update. 10 is the last OS Microsoft intends to release until 2025 or something like that. That's their published date. They're going with a platform that they can run for the next extended period of time with frequent updates. Right? So when we think about that integration, what are those integration points with Windows 10 that they've baked into Office 16? So logging into Office and Windows. So the first thing is Office 2016 requires you to be logged in. It does a licensing check. It does a user check to make sure you're you, and it understands what your rights are and what the controls are. And we have that native integration and pass-through where when you're logging into Windows, it will pass that right to Office 365, pass it right to Office, right? The other big feature with Windows 10 is it's a laptop when you need it, a tablet when you want it. So when we think about that, it's changing that interface from touch to non-touch, depending on the modality when you're in. So if we're thinking about Office, you've in 2013 you may have noticed in the upper left-hand corner you can change the ribbon bar to a more touch-centric ribbon bar, meaning it makes the icons larger, gives you a little easier access to them. So if you're in a touch environment, it works a little better. And again, Windows 10 is going to automatically do that for you and bring that in. And then we bring in the idea of no more passwords. When we're things like using facial recognition for login to your device, where it's doing 32-point facial recognition. A great stat or a great fact from one of the internal tech specialists for devices that I learned just yesterday. It's actually sophisticated enough that in testing it can determine the identity between identical twins. So it was actually able to discern the difference between multiple sets of identical twins from facial recognition for login. Again, just personalizing it a lot more and making that login a lot easier to Office and all of your content. And then the other big thing is Cortana and voice-based search. So when we think about Cortana, a lot of people think about Siri, they think about Cortana, and they think, oh, cute, I can have it tell me reminders, it might tell me when I need to leave for my meeting. That's cute. Nice little bonus, but really what's the business function? And the key now is that we're connecting Cortana back to Office 365, back to Power BI, so that she can help do all sorts of controls. You can actually have Cortana open up a specific Word document or open up a specific piece of content on your machine simply by talking and saying, open up the payroll file, and it will go and find it and open it for you. Have it do things like, hey Cortana, give me what's the sales forecast for the next quarter. And it will go out and grab that information from your content, from Power BI, from your Office documents, and return results to you, making it very easy to grab information. Also connecting to your calendar, so reminders on calendar meetings or sending out informations, all those useful everyday kind of things that we're looking to do. Okay, so Cortana is going to be a lot more than just that basic digital assistant. And then, of course, she heard me, so now she's trying to run a search because I kept saying her name, and I have her on voice activation. All right. So now when we think about that continuum, it's about bringing it to your other mobile devices. So another big thing with Windows 10 is that all the devices are the same. They're running that same core code. So there's Office for your phone, Office for your Surface tablet, Office for your desktop, Office for your iPad, Office for your Android device. So bringing that information with you wherever you go. So when we think about, Windows 10 devices, it picks right up where you left off. So we'll see that feature in a little bit, but it's aware of all your settings. It's aware of all your information, and that information and those settings are shared across all your Windows 10 devices. So that if my ribbon bar is configured a certain way, or if I like to print to a certain printer, or if I have my most recent documents, all of that information follows me to the different environments. So when I open up Word on my phone, it knows my most recent documents, it knows my my templates that I use, etc., etc. So the next slide gets into that a little more, and when we think about all those other tablets and devices, again, iOS, Android, right? Regardless of the platform, Office is the tool that we want to use to maintain and control that information. Particularly when we think about the Office mobile apps, a lot of thought process has gone into them for optimizing for touch, for putting in a really visually expressive and utilizing the device itself, utilizing the features and the functions of the particular device. When we think about, touch first, or when we think about different form factors and size, a lot of redesign has gone into Office 2016 with the thought process of those different modalities or those different environments. Okay, now works for you. This is actually, I think, the most exciting things we're going to talk about. When we talk about staying in the know, settings, control, and security, as well as getting into the update cycles and some of the technical backend. So when we think about roaming documents, right, we want to think about understanding it knows where you left off, switching between your devices. With cloud integration, we're able to have those settings follow you everywhere you go. Understanding things like who's making edits where, what edits have been made, as well as things like versioning and controls. Now, when we think about this following you everywhere, and we think about this controlling flow of information, that's where things like modern attachments come in. So for years, for those who have been using SharePoint for years, one of the thought processes, we want to stop using email as a file storage utility, right? People use it as a file sharing and file storage utility, and that's really not what email was designed for, and it does a pretty poor job of it. What we want to do instead is utilize the other applications, features and functions of Server 2012 or SharePoint or OneDrive, so that we can share links to the document as opposed to sharing the entire application. Now, again, for those who are using SharePoint, this has been a goal for years and years. The problem is the applications didn't play along, particularly Outlook. Whenever you hit attach an item in Outlook, it actually attached the document. It had no ability to share the link. To share the link, you had to go into Word and hit share, or you had to go into your SharePoint library or your OneDrive library and hit share. Now we've added that native functionality into Outlook where it will, by default, actually attempt to share the link. And right from within Outlook, you can do automatic permission setting, automatic rights control. Then from an IT standpoint, we can start trumping maybe what a user has set. If a user is attempting to share out a document that they have rights to and wants to say, okay, everybody I send this to has the ability to edit the document, but this document has been flagged as confidential. Going back to the rights management we talked about earlier, If this document has been flagged as confidential, well, then we can start applying automatic transport rules. Because the content is confidential, no, you don't have permission to share that out. Or because I notice a social security number in this, we're going to start applying rights management to the content as it's flowing back and forth. And start doing that at the transport layer on the messages to change what users are attempting to do so that we can maintain our data integrity. So then when we think about now that we're all collaborating and we've shared it out, we now also have that ability to do versions control a lot better within the document itself, so that versions can be maintained and stored for longer periods of time. You can do review earlier snapshots, side-by-side comparisons right natively within it to see. You can see that history tab on the side, which is going to show you all of those updates at various points in time, give you a little more visibility. It's a little more user-friendly into that history for what's gone on with a particular document. So as we're collaborating on this document, as we're all connected, I have a little more confidence. If someone makes a change that we don't like, we can roll it out and take it out very easy. So now when we think about things like Smart Lookup, now it's doing an in-app web search. So we can start going out and grabbing information from, highlight a particular fact. Is this true that 80% of people do this? You can do insights right from within a document to fact check yourself, to grab various pieces of information. It'll search all sorts of different points, from Bing to the Oxford Dictionary, etc., where you can grab different pieces of information. So again, that Smart Lookup is about grabbing that text, highlighting that text, and then going out and searching for relevant results on the internet to gain better data points, right? You can point that at some of your own internal information as well. Just checking the QA tab to see if we have any questions. Don't forget that's down there. So the next feature we'll talk about is Tell Me, which is kind of a different kind of help. You can just type in the words Tell Me into any feature you need, and it will help you figure out what's going on. What does that mean? So natural language, hey, how does this work, or how does this feature or function work? So from a user perspective, if a new feature is there, or if I forget how to do something or how this works, the Tell Me will show you how to do that, or or where that feature or function will be. So if you type in, under Tell Me new image or add a picture, it will display how to insert a picture or how to insert an object, or tell me how to do a bar graph versus a different kind of graph. So a new kind of help that people can use common language or regular expression to figure out what they need to do. Make it a little easier for users to adopt to the changes. Now, specific to Excel has added a whole bunch of new visualization charts for visualizing data, waterfall for financial data, histograms, box and whisker, Pareto, which is for statistical, tree map, and sunburst, which is hierarchical. So we've added all of these new display types for just showing different types of BI or different types of data, just different ways to express your information. And then now if we take these and then save them up to Power BI, Power BI works within Excel to expose these as reports or as information to others. So now you can take all these wonderful, and I've heard this complained about a lot at a lot of different companies, that they have these wonderful Excel spreadsheets, these wonderful pieces of content that they want to share out with others, but people don't know they're there, they don't know where to find them. And by using things like Power BI, we now start publishing these out in a single repository for people to go and find reports and data and ask queries to find that information. So now take these wonderful new charts and content that you've created and expose it out to the larger organization. So just some of the different types that when we look at them. So then when we think about forecasting in particular, you can create forecast charts based on historical data with something called one-click forecasting. So you can take a spreadsheet and use the historical data within it to build out a forecast for what's going to happen over the next 6, 9, 12 months or whatever period you did. This is using the exponential smoothing ETS algorithm for forecasting. So if you're looking to again take that data and build it forward, we now have the ability to do some forward-looking data within Excel. So now when we think about some of those cool new features, from an IT standpoint, this is where there's some really radical changes coming on, and this is probably one of the features, or we're going to talk about some features or functions from from an IT perspective, which may not be in line with the way your organization does updates today, but there's a change kind of coming in the Microsoft mentality for updating and modernizing the Office applications as well as Windows. So when we think about the secure Office, we think about DLP. So we think about bringing all those DLP tools as we talked about earlier. We're also now incorporating multi-factor authentication into Office itself, so that opening up Outlook, you can be doing things like MFA for secure access for your remote people. And then we also talk about IRM, where we're able to do encryption both for offline and online of data in transit, as well as when it hits the final end. The other big piece here when we talk about security is about keeping it up to date. So doing those rapid updates, doing those releases of Office to keep things moving. So when we think about our updating, Microsoft is going to be on a 4-month release cycle for Office 2016, meaning they're planning an upgrade to it or sort of a release to features and functions every 4 months to Office 2016. Now, they're also only going to support 2 versions back. So meaning that they're going to, if January 1st Rev A launches, then May 1st Rev B launches. Sometime in September, October, when Rev C launches, Rev A will no longer be supported. So Rev A will then fall out of security updates for compliance, meaning you're going to have to do these updates every 4 months. And the good news is you do have, or 8 months, I should say. Good news is you'll have 8 months to allow the update to flow through, so that you can keep it on the most up-to-date version. Windows 10 is going to follow a fairly similar release cycle in that it's going to be updated every few months or so with new features or functions. How does Microsoft, what's Microsoft doing as a concession to that when we think about things like SOX and HIPAA and all of these other compliance tools? Well, the updates are going to be much smaller, much more compact, and really they're going to try and avoid radical changes to the core code except every few years. So similar, you'll be on that every 2 or 3 years. That might be a fairly radical update that they'll pretty widely announce. But on the other hand, those incremental updates are going to be very small, adding features or functions, adding something like the share button, or adding a different, maybe a different graph or a different function that's requested by users. So Microsoft's going to be able to be very responsive to people as well as to the features and functions that they're going to look for. But you are going to need to have a good testing methodology. If, say, you are SOX compliant, you're going to need to have a good testing methodology to make sure that you can keep up to date with the updates as they're flowing. Some of the other features and functions are the new MAPI HTTP protocol, which is very internet friendly. All the ability to manage storage better. You know, we think about things like Office 365. Great, you can have 50 gigs of mail with an unlimited archive, but do I want to control my users' local OST files? Do I want to control the amount of data that's stored there that's off-site? Reduce time to download messages. So they display very quickly, um, they come down very quickly. That the new protocol is very good at getting things out there, and Outlook is a lot more responsive to unreliable networks, right? It's one of the big things that was eliminated is foreground network calls. So basically, it's not it's a lot less chatty than it used to be, and utilizing low bandwidth network connections much more efficiently. So the big changes, obviously have to do with when you let people update, when you're pushing out those updates and controlling that flow, controlling that information. So with that, I really wanted to keep this short and sweet. The real keys here are that integration with the rest of the Microsoft solution set, the integration with things like Skype for Business, the integration with SharePoint and OneDrive and groups, as well as optimizing for security through things like MFA and through facial recognition login and biometrics, as well as some improved protocols for Outlook and improve update strategies through things like click to run and those features and functions. Sorry, I realize I never advanced the slide to the next one. So with that, I'll open it up the Q&A to any particular questions you have around it. For those of you in Office 365 already, it's been available for months, something you can just go download and configure. For those of you who are the administrators of Office 365 tenants, if you weren't aware, if you didn't disable it, your users have been able to download it for some time now. So it's definitely something to watch if you want to control that flow. But the information is all there in an Office 365 tenant, or if you're an enterprise agreement customer, you can download the bits from there. So I'm jumping over to the Q&A tab here. If you have any questions at all along the bottom, you can feel free to go there.
Chris, how do you recommend people proceed? If you don't currently have a plan and you're thinking about 2016, maybe you are or are not an enterprise agreement customer, what's the process?
Absolutely. So the biggest things for Office 2016 and Windows 10, I'll kind of lump them in together, is to understand that upgrade strategy and really come into how you're modernizing your desktop environment and how you're managing that and making sure that you as an organization have a plan. Some we can definitely come in and help with and help you put together a plan for modernizing the desktop and getting used to this rapid update cycle and this sort of self-service or on-demand updating that will go on, and getting the organization used to it, because that's actually probably the biggest thing, the biggest hurdle I see for organizations to this is that mental blocker of, all right, how are we going to manage this and how are we going to control these updates and what's that going to look like for our user base, and getting used to that sort of that rapid update cycle. So a planning for how to modernize your desktops, a planning for content management and control, as well as security, are all great ways to start for a rollout of Office 2016. You could also start simply by doing a pilot group. If you do already have access to it and you have some good security and controls, definitely something to look at. But all of a sudden, you have to start thinking about guidance along like Excel spreadsheets. How do we build them? Are we doing pivot tables? Because if you want to start utilizing things like Power BI, Power BI requires that the Excel spreadsheets uploaded into it, or it's recommended anyway, that the Excel spreadsheets are loaded up into it, or Power BI, or Power Pivot, or dynamic spreadsheets, or how do we do naming on our columns, right? All of a sudden, BI-based searches on your Excel spreadsheets, what you name the columns in your finance sheets makes a big difference. And these are the kinds of things when we talk about integrating to the rest of the solution set that you need to think about. Great question, Christine. All right, jumping over to the Q&A tab. I don't see any other questions, so I'll give everybody one last go at it. If not, then we'll give you back a few minutes of your time. Hopefully, you saw some of the new features and functions that are there, and hopefully, you picked up that the overall look and feel isn't radically different. I think Microsoft definitely learned from the ribbon bar fiasco of '07, and the big philosophy is small changes more frequently, right? Instead of doing large completely, let's change 30 things at once every couple of years. Let's go to that. Let's change one thing every couple of months or two things every couple of months. Make it much easier on the users to adopt to change, to make use of the various tools and the various productivity applications we have, and make it easier for them to consume.
I don't see anything else in the Q&A, so at this point I am going to stop the recording.